Welcome back to my podcast, To Whom It May Concern Hood Professionals. Today I have two very special guests with joining me, and we're practicing safe social distancing. So we are in three separate places. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. Where do you start first? Ladies first.
Hey, I'm Retta. Not really sure what else y'all need to know.
You can tell me a little bit about your background. I mean, it's really about up to you. What do you want to say about yourself?
Well, in regards to whom it may concern, I think it's probably relevant to say I am a proud HBCU alumni graduate in my fourth corporate role in about 10, 12 years. Just try to navigate success out here.
Excellent. And it's also her birthday, so happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And for the gentleman, who's on the call with us?
Yeah, that was nice. Hello, everyone. Tafari Dawes here. Been in corporate America for about 25 years now. Been in recruiting the same amount of time. Started out doing minority recruitment with a minority-owned executive search firm. Work for companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I also work for a similar company now, FTI Consulting. We're a global advisory firm.
Catch that resume. Okay.
You sound fancy.
Don't you know? 25 years I've been
I told you I do this, Audrey.
There you go.
Anyway, on this podcast, my name is AP. Okay. All right. So, going forward, so we're going to talk about transitioning from one job, or from really more so like from one career to the next. So I know that in this point in time, in this day and age of COVID-19, we are experiencing people who are out of work. And from what I understand, when we graduated in 2008, coming out of college, we graduated during a recession.
Sure did.
And it was, it was hard on these streets. And a lot of people who found themselves having been in a career for a long time found themselves having to navigate and go elsewhere because new talent is coming in and it can be acquired at a lower price. I mean, just facts. So for people like myself, I'm currently a nonprofit. I'm a nonprofit professional. I'm looking to I'm looking to transition. I'm always curious as to see how it compares in status to those who are more so in business or America, where it seems like it's a little bit more easier transition when you in that field as opposed to when you're coming out of other fields that aren't necessarily as business oriented, if I can say. So when do you know that it's time to leave where you are?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I'll take the liberties. I feel like our veteran might have much more to say here than I do. For me, and AP, I didn't even think about that as far as I think about it all the time, the fact that we came out of college in a recession, because I am still financially impacted by issues happening at that time, or I feel like I am at least. But at that time, I went into my first corporate role, and I had a mentor there that he was just like a big brother, still one of my favorite people to this day. I like to call him Money because he was in charge of finances for our department. And he gave me just drop wisdom all the time, walking by in casual situations, whether it related to me or to something going on in his life. He would just say things that I would pick up. But one of the things that I always took from him is that he told me directly, you shouldn't be in the same role for 3 years, for more than 3 years. And if you do, then there's a problem there and you're stagnant. And that doesn't mean having the same title. It could be anything from, do you have the same title and are you doing the same thing, or has your actual role and worth expanded? Are you doing more challenging work? Do people see you in a different light? Have you gotten a raise in any regard? But if everything is just flat and stagnant and it's been that way for 3 years, then either you're a problem or you need to escape a problem. So I always take that with me, and I still see it in my everyday life too. I'm looking around constantly when I'm looking for roles or starting a new one. It's okay, what's the 3 year plan look like? And for me, being somebody that I don't really have a future destination of where I want to be, or this is the ideal role for me. I'm more into challenges and experiences. It kind of is challenging to do when you're first starting a position, to see, well, where can I grow in this, and do I want to, and how do I make that happen? Because if you're not making it happen, then you're the problem. So I always think about it that way. And then again, for on the other end of that, I see a lot of different people that just have, I don't know. I think it depends on a person's outlook. My outlook is, I don't like to leave a job unless I have something that is going to make me stand out for a resume bullet on that. Like whether it's leaving a company or leaving a position in a company and staying within that company. If I can't say I did something worthwhile and impactful, then I feel like I personally don't deserve to move on, or I haven't figured out the way to succeed there. So I think it's relative to each person, but you definitely have to be aware of, is there actual opportunity, and are you worthy of moving on to whatever it is that you desire next?
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of self-reflecting that you're saying when it comes to the why, like why or how do I know that it's time to leave?
I think so. And again, everybody is different. So I think all of their experiences are different. Their needs are different. Where you want to go is different. I think your opening example was switching career fields, like from nonprofit to corporate. I don't personally think there's a lot of difference there, because at the end of the day, a business is a business, and nonprofits are businesses also. The differences are in culture and not in sometimes the work and experience. So it's up to a person to look at, well, what experience do I want and where can I get it? And if I can't get it or create it where I am, then I probably need to move. But if you're just somebody that doesn't really like change and you're cool with the status quo, then you probably won't ever find a time to move on.
Well, what do you think, Safari? Like with your background being in recruiting, I know that you are kind of like to me, when I think of recruiters, I think of like that decision makers, like the person with the golden key, like you're the golden child. Like how do you see that when people are making that transition between careers?
Well, she touched on it. Retta touched on a big part of it is, in regards to your growth. Are you growing in your role, or are you just stagnant? But one thing I think that's really important is, most of all, are you happy? Are you are you are you happy with what you're doing? Because if you're not happy, then something's wrong. Is the environment toxic? Toxic. Do you like your boss? Do you like your colleagues? But the I like when she talked about growth, because you ultimately you want to grow in your role. Like she said, the 3 year role, the 3 year role. So if you're in your role for 3 years and you're not moving up, and you're basically doing the same thing, I agree, something is wrong. Sometimes you may be being overlooked. Maybe your boss doesn't appreciate what you bring to the table. Maybe deep down, maybe you're meant for, bigger and better things. So maybe you have to go outside to find those things. A lot of the times, companies don't realize the talent that they have. And sometimes you have to look outside for that. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. Whether that's, some favoritism that's going on with your boss. Maybe certain people in that particular company are getting promoted and certain people aren't. So you have to, kind of figure out that culture, kind of navigate your way through. What are your performance reviews looking like? Are you getting, are your scores better than some of your colleagues, but you're still not getting ahead? Maybe there are some things there that, maybe there's some things that you can't control, and then maybe you need to get out.
Okay.
Well, hold on. Real life story. I'm fresh out of one of those toxic work environments myself. Fresh out is the trauma is still there. And then that was one of the things that I struggled with too, was, like I said, personally, if I don't feel like I've accomplished something that is worthy of my resume, then it's difficult for me to move on. In my 4 companies, all Fortune 500, I don't really think that matters. I haven't made any lateral moves ever. And I feel like that's because I can show what I've done and how I've performed. So in a very toxic work environment that was that way from pretty much day 3, I kind of felt trapped in. And then so I spent my time there, which was too many years. No, it was just enough because everything works out the way it's supposed to. Trying to figure out how to make the best of that situation. So as it turned out, in the end, I think the situation that was good that came out of it for me was I was able to get involved in some things that allowed me to network with people in high positions, and build personal relationships, even though my entire team situation was toxic and that was going nowhere. So when I left that company, that put me in a better situation. So I feel like that's part of it too. Because I've seen some people leave a job just because they're not happy or they don't like it, but they don't leave to anything that's going to better them, and sometimes leave into situations that are equally as negative or, set them back a little bit just because they wanted to get out of that environment, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. I just read something. I read something on the Muse where it's saying that people who follow your passion, everything will fall into place. That Kool-Aid, it says that scientifically it shows that people who follow their passion statistically have a lower probability of finding long-term career fulfillment than those who leverage existing career capital when making a shift. It suggests that you're much better off pivoting into roles that leverage the career capital you've already built up over the years, and drawing these areas of experience in new and creative ways. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, you are your skill set. Yeah, you wanna capitalize on the things that you've done. As a recruiter, I'm looking at your resume and I'm looking at your accomplishments, and I'm trying to make sure that your skill set is matching up to what we're looking for and matching up to those, the skills and responsibilities of the job description. So I can agree with that. But then on the flip side, it depends on the person and it depends on the opportunity, because, sometimes you can follow your heart and still succeed.
What do you think, sorry to jump in, as a recruiter, it takes to do that? Because I feel like on my side, if you don't have experience to do something and you're jumping over, usually somebody is giving you that chance because you have a relationship with them via whatever in your network. So is that what you see?
No, I agree. Because when I'm looking for, especially someone on the experience side, I'm looking for someone that has the skill set, that has the skills. I don't have time, or the company doesn't have the resources to have to train. So we're going to actually try to look for somebody who has the skills and is currently doing the job. So if you're leaving somewhere and you don't have that skill set, more than likely, like you said, you've built a relationship with someone and they're kind of opening the door for you. That's why it's very important to cultivate relationships at places you are. You don't want to burn your bridges.
That's actually one of the things that I saw on there, where it was talking about, of course, journalists are always trying to be hip, shall I say, but they were like, mobilize your posse. I would say your crew, but getting people on board. But here's the tricky thing, and I feel like people make this mistake a lot, and I hate when people do this. They send emails from their current work email account, which is like a huge no-no. But I think if people try to use it to show people, yes, I am currently employed at the place that I said that I am employed at on my application. But how do you connect with people enough to open up and let them know that you are looking for work outside of that current workplace, that it's not going to blow up in your face?
So I'm one of those people. I have sent emails from my current employer to my future employer, but just because I'm there all day, so I want to be able to reply quickly to you, and you already know I'm employed, so it doesn't really matter to you on the other end of it, but I want to make sure I'm seeing and responding so we can go ahead and make this process go. So I'll say that's the other end of that part. But honestly, from what I've seen, anything where you're utilizing your network to get a position is not coming from a relationship like that, like where you're emailing back and forth with like a recruiter or a hiring manager or somebody referred you that way. It's an actual personal connection, like you went to an industry group meeting or you went to some sort of a mixer or something and met a person and had a conversation and they liked you in person. So they say, hey, here's an opportunity, or I'm going to introduce you to somebody, or you offer yourself up for something like that. There's usually a personal connection that's already there. And then you're just maintaining it from what I've seen.
Yeah, I don't. It could be a sticky or tricky situation. It just depends on who you're emailing. Sometimes as a recruiter, I look, and maybe it's just a habit, to see exactly where that email is coming from. Some people may look at it as a ethical type of situation. If you're kind of emailing from your company to another company, I don't think it's a big deal because, like you say, you're there all day. There shouldn't be anybody checking your emails or looking behind you trying to see what you're doing. I don't necessarily think it's a big thing, but a big deal. But I can see how some people may try to pay that ethical card in regards to trying to, talking about another job and you're at a current job. Well, so it depends on the individual. I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay. So then I have an issue with being able to go into situations like, I like to volunteer. So if I'm volunteering, I'm volunteering. However, how is it, to me, it seems different when you're volunteering with a company that you're wanting to get on with. So it's kind of like you're going in with ulterior motives. How do you play that card? Like, how do you play this role? Like, I'm really coming here because I'm trying to make connections because this is it, but I'm here under the pretense of I am volunteering.
Networking, establishing relationships. 9 out of 10 times they know what you're doing.
Yeah, it really is truly just being as bold to say, hey, how do you guys work, or what's it like here? What's the experience? Like those, I think of them as over coffee conversations. And I feel like there's a certain demographic that's just better at it than others because they are not very private at all. But it's just the boldness of, oh, how long have you been here? Oh, what do you do? How do you like it? What's the company like? Blah, blah, blah. All of those things that I probably wouldn't ask people because I feel like it's intrusive, but they are acceptable in the context of networking.
Oh, yeah, showing initiative. There's nothing wrong with it, especially in the context of, a job. So you're talking about the job, you're networking. Your conversation is around the job. So you're fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Showing initiative. But then again, you got to peep your surroundings. You got to know who you're talking to. You'll know whether or not, you should be talking to somebody about certain things. You should have some type of instinct, kind of feel someone out.
So how do you follow up from that? Okay, so now we've had the initial conversation. How do you go about maintaining this relationship that is really built up to trying to find an end into this new company?
Stay connected. You don't want to hound anyone. You just want to establish some relationships, kind of, be a little friendly, and just kind of stick with it. You just you have to kind of feel your situation out.
See, and now that's difficult because I am an introvert to the T. I do not like I don't mind answering questions and I don't mind being open about things, but I do mind forcing conversation or feeling like I'm forcing conversation. And though the person on the other end might not feel like it's forced, I do, because I don't really want to have it, to be quite honest. So that is difficult. And therefore, in addition, following up is difficult because sometimes follow up is a nuisance, and it just is it's a thing that you have to do, and you just do it, and you understand, well, this is just the cost, play the game, and you are okay with being a nuisance, and I am not. So I do not network well, and I don't have any insight on that. I've seen other people do it. I've seen how it works, and things like that, finding ways to connect, because in my world, and I do supplier diversity. So my entire, which is weird because my job is based on connections between the suppliers and our sourcing teams or our business units or whatever. It works for me because I'm building a program and there's a lot of strategy in the background of that to make it work, versus the having to constantly talk to people and meet people. It works for me because I'm not the one that has to follow up. It's usually other people that are chasing me down and hunting me down. So I find myself giving them advice or participating in trainings that they do where they say to these suppliers, hey, this person is your foot in the door. You want to make sure that you maintain contact with them, but you don't annoy them so that they like just blackball you or whatever. So it becomes a lot of how do you structure an email? So it's like, hey, nice to meet you at this event. I really enjoyed talking to you about this, and that. As I mentioned, here's my company's A, B, and C. And then if you don't hear anything back from it, hi, following up with you, checking in to see how this was. But it's all about listening in that conversation, picking up things that are common points, where you can ask somebody, like if you found a common thing was y'all like a certain book or a certain author, did you see this new thing come out from that author? Or, hey, how are your kids doing in this thing that you said they were participating in? And also, by the way, here's new information about whatever I was talking about. And at some point that still gets stale and stagnant, but it's the switching up the conversation. So in my mind, as somebody that does not like to follow up because I don't like to bother people, I feel like it's the same scenario of, not constantly asking that direct question of, hey, what's going on with this job? Or remember I talked to you about this, or hey, can we meet? But just finding ways to stay in the forefront of their mind and not be forgotten on occasion. That makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Far, you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I understand exactly where she's coming from, and being a recruiter.
You hate talking to people too?
Well, I used to. I don't anymore, but this was way early on in my career. Like my wife tells me right now, I'm too damn friendly, and I tell her, I tell it, I'm used to it. It's my job. I have to do it, and sometimes it just comes out of me. But I have to bug people every day, like I'm recruiting people, and I'm reaching out to people who don't even know who the hell I am, and sometimes they can get rude, like why the hell are you bothering me? So I try to find something that we have in common. I use LinkedIn. What school you went to. Or, I try to break the ice. I'm a Florida State fan. If I see that you're a Gator. I may tease you a little bit. I try to find something that I have in common with them, and I try to mirror them as much as I can. If I'm looking at their background and I'm kind of reading, how they're writing their stuff, and I can kind of tell if they're amiable, if they're a director driver, and I try to mirror that. But that's how I get a lot of my jobs, though. I've established relationship. I stay in contact with people, even if I just drop them an email. I'm just checking in, see how you're doing. How you and the fam doing. Especially like during a time like this, people remember that stuff.
Yeah.
So I try to stay in contact with people. I try not to bother them too much, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and that's how I got this last job, this job that I have now. Like I got laid off from PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I always kept in contact with the guy that hired me at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He left, but I would always just every now and again I just drop him a line because I know how they do us. So I know at any time I'd be gone, right? So they laid me off. Although they told me I would be safe. Got a call one day, HR, boom. I'm like, wow, y'all gonna do me like this? Okay. So this guy that I kept in contact periodically, I reached out to him, and a week later he hired me as a contractor, and after that, about a year or two, I got on permanently. But that was just, through the relationship that I had with him.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was quote unquote forced on him, I got to do what I got to do.
Hey, and I like that. I like that tenacity. I think that's things that people need to understand, that it pays to be persistent and it pays to be consistent. I know there is a fine line between being like, a nuisance and just enough. So the other part too that comes the most daunting task of transitioning, and that is the resume. And I feel like resume development, for it seems like every year it changes about what people are looking for. My resume was, I had a company to put my resume together, so I didn't really have to put a whole lot of thought into it. I mean, the way that she piled it, having me to ask like specific questions in my role, I never thought about that. And like you all were saying earlier, have you been able to grow in your current role before you think to move on to elsewhere? And it seems like resumes now are more about numbers than it is necessarily about words. So what are some things, I know, Greta, you did some lightweight hiring in your position and recruiting. What are some things that have changed in resume development that people would be wise to implement that?
I'm going to defer to the expert for his long-ranging experience, and then
I'll jump in. And I don't know that it's necessarily changed a whole lot, especially not on my end. There's certain things that I look for, like first of all, I'm looking for grammatical errors and things like that. That's one thing you should first do is, edit your resume and make sure there are no grammatical errors and obvious errors. Should be some periods there. Your resume should mirror the job description, right? I shouldn't have to search on your resume for the skills that I'm looking for. It should be first and foremost. Mm-hmm. I don't like looking at long resumes. If you can limit your resumes to 2 pages, that's great. Even 1 pager, a lot of recruiters are lazy. I wouldn't even say lazy. We got a lot of resumes to look at, and we don't want to read a book, right? And then one thing also is learn to kind of write the resume where applicant tracking software can read it.
Correct. Yep.
Right. So the software reads from left to right. All the bolding and italicizing, that doesn't matter. And a lot of times it won't even pick up on that software. So on the other end, when we get it, your resume may be formatted all crazy, and boom, next to the other person. And then you wonder why you ain't getting no call. It's because you're doing a little too much with your resume. Highlight your relevant work experience. Like you said, demonstrate your worth with numbers. Your accomplishments, percentages, certifications, promoted here, this type of award. Show the growth in your positions. Keywords, mirror that job description. Look at that job description. Make sure you see those keywords in that job description. Make sure it's on your resume. And you should be fine.
I pretty much agree with that. Like I have always had, and that's why I wanted to defer to your multi-year experience. I've only known the concept of you should never have just one resume. You should update your resume for literally every job that you're applying for. And for me, so to your point, I was laid off from the toxic environment partially because I asked to be. But with that in mind, I had no idea what I wanted to do next. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to explore multiple different opportunities that I have interest in. So I had a resume for every type of interest, whether it was software consulting in my former space, whether it was project management, whether it was supplier diversity that I'm doing now, whatever it was, I had a different resume. And that was a template, a different template, but that still got updated based on what that job description says, exactly what Safari said. So like at the end of the day, the easiest thing to do is if they're asking for somebody that can do A, B, C, and D, is make sure the words in your resume say A, B, C, and D. So you know for a fact somebody's going to see them. But I think that's the other point too. And I've seen it mostly, I think, in the difference between like folks that have gone to college and have access to career planning and placement services, or recent in there, and there are maybe somebody there speaking to them about software. But if you look at some generations, they have no idea that there's a such thing as HR software that's reading resumes before a person does. So they don't know that you need to have keywords or how those keywords work, or anything like that, that's going to hit an algorithm that's going to pull your resume to the top or throw it in the trash can. So I think that's a thing to think about too, is how long have you been in your field, and are you in touch with what's going on in the hiring world, and with where you're looking, or anything like that. And maybe do you need to reach out for help or assistance, or, whatever. But at the end of the day, I live and breathe on multiple resumes and making sure they find a way to say, I can do exactly what you're asking for or looking for, or more than that. And then I find a way to update. That's a kind of another thing. Usually keep having in a while, like a master resume that has all of my jobs ever and all the bullets and all the accomplishments ever, and have them worded appropriately. And then for each different job, I might not tell them every job that I've done. I'm going to tell them like my overall history, but I'm going to focus on things that are relevant to what they're looking for, or I'm going to pull the bullet points that are worded specifically. And also, all I've ever known are numbers and percentages and results based bullets, just because that's the way the business world is geared. But I do understand there are, like in a nonprofit, they might not care about it. They care about those actionable things, but your bullet is going to be structured, and your percentages and your numbers are going to be structured differently than somebody in a traditional corporate role, like a finance role, where their job is this day to day. If your role is in a nonprofit and you're like, what are you tasked with? What is the point of your job? And then find some numbers that reflect how well you did that job or exceeded that job. Like, how do you measure that thing? And then it may be more about telling a story. So I do think it's a lot to do with who's the actual company and what's the culture of the company you're applying to also. Because I always think back to, and then I will shut up. I always think back to I had mock interviews in college. And it was like the exact same field, exact same type of roles. I did the exact same thing that I had rehearsed for these mock interviews, one with Target and one with Bank of America. Target did not like me at all with all of the things that I laid out, whereas Bank of America loved me and tried to promote me for opportunities in like investment banking, which I had nothing related to it. I was not touching anything financial, but it was because they felt like I fit their culture, and Target's culture was more free flowing, fun, and hippie, where I was focused on getting things done. So they didn't think I was a good fit. So that also comes into play. Does your resume read like the culture of the place you're applying to?
That's a good thing to think of too. And I think for me, it wasn't until I was with this one organization that I loved, the last organization I was with in Atlanta, that I got into data analysis. Because beforehand, I could care less about data. Like, whatever. Like, did we get the grant or not? All right, cool beans. Now pay me so I can do the work. But actually, like, but I feel like it's not until you get an opportunity to get into a role where there's a new challenge imposed upon you. Like, okay, now you have to deal with it, and that was something I never dealt with before. But ever since then, now you do kind of. I think everyone should be, hip to a little bit of data analysis because it is a great way to beef up your resume and to show in terms of like if you're going to a new career that may be, you can show like, okay, this is how I can show you that I understand the culture or I understand what is going on over here in this particular new language.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm really into it. Never thought because I hate numbers. Numbers make me nervous. Unless there's a dollar sign in front of it, I really don't want to deal with it.
At the end of the day, though, which I guess I am just stumbling into things. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, but I knew everything that gave you a paycheck was some type of business. So that's why I pursued business. It's kind of to that same point. At the end of the day, every business runs off of some type of data. It might not be the same type. This company might care more about sales and revenue. That might care more about traffic coming in a door. But at the end of the day, that all boils down to data. So I think it's beneficial for everybody in every role to at least understand, even if you're not looking at the data, understand what the data points are that the leadership cares about, because that's what they're using to make decisions on. And that's how they'll ultimately decide to keep you or not.
Right.
At some point.
I feel like that answers my next thing with how to stand out in the candidate pool is pretty much making sure that what they're looking for, you possess those things and you can deliver on that. Now, before we close out, here is the one thing on applications that I don't like, and sometimes I pick and choose if I answer this question. Does disclosing your demographics on applications, is that necessary? It says it's optional, but I'm always leery about it. Like, so I want you to really answer this. How do you look
Me too.
How on the application? Are you like what the fuck? Like, why wouldn't they just answer the damn question? Or are you like, okay, I understand? Or sometimes are you like, now, Shaniqua, we know who you are?
It depends. I've had that issue all my life because my name is Tafari, right? So when you see my name, automatic, you're gonna know, what my background is and what I look like. So I always struggled with whether or not I wanted to self-identify with what I was, right, or what I am.
I was gonna say, what happened? You don't have to change.
It's. I say do what you're comfortable with doing. If you're not comfortable, self-identify, then don't. But at the same time, especially with a lot of companies and this big diversity push that these companies have now, so now it's actually hip to be a minority.
Sure is.
So that can actually help you get a job, right? You don't look at it as affirmative action. Look at it as, these companies are trying to get a little more diverse because, it's been proven, the more diverse your company is, your bottom line is going to be a little better. It's just proven, different cultures bringing different ideas. And if it reflects society more, those are the more successful companies. And these companies are finally getting it. Right. So it's like it's the end thing now, to be Hispanic, to be African American, we're considered underrepresented minorities. Right. So they're underrepresented in these companies. So they're trying to get these numbers up. So I would suggest that you put that you're African American. And if you're African American and female. Right. So that's the inclusion part also. So that's a double whammy. I say put it.
So you really think companies are getting it, or you really think they're getting it, or you think they're doing it because of public perception?
Both.
tax credit? I just want to know which one is it.
It's both. It is. And it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to answer that question because it's reflective in the company's hierarchy, their leaderships, right? So you go to these boards and you look at the C suites and you see who's in there. Is it diverse or not? Because it starts at the top, so you kind of know whether or not they're just running their mouth. With the company that I'm with, I kind of thought they were running their mouth, but I actually think we're serious about it. Like one thing that we do, one of the ways I know we're serious about it is, every resume that we get that we send to the hiring manager, we ghost it. So we take any identifiers off the resume. The year, the school you went to, take it off. Year you graduated, take it off. Your name, take it off. Right? We take it off.
So I do worry about my year I graduated, and I worry about and I love my school. I'm a proud HBCU alum, but I do have reservations with my school because I'm like, oh,
yeah, because it's going to identify you right away. And even if someone, see, everyone has unconscious bias. That's why we take it off, because you have unconscious bias. You might, I like Florida State, and if I see a Gator resume, unconsciously I'm thinking, chump. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not trying to do it. So that's how I know we're actually serious about this, because we take all the identifying information off. Once the hiring manager says, yeah, I like this person, then I send the unredacted resume to them. And I know they want to interview them.
Got it. That's interesting. I am hiring right now, and we are not doing those things because I can see those details, at least school and all of that. I have never been concerned about self-identifying, and I don't know if it's coming out of college in 2008 and knowing then diversity and inclusion was a thing or becoming a thing. I feel like at the end of the day, if you see my merit and you see the quality of the bullets on my resume and you don't want to hire me for some other reason, I am better off not being at that location because it's probably a worse working environment. I've never had to deal with that. I've never had to deal with that. So there's that. But on the upside of it, the only experience I've seen has been diversity and inclusion and it being an asset. And I feel like I'm just a person that wants to be counted anyway. So I feel, especially when we talk about HBCUs and we talk about all of those things, and we talk about data, I feel like statistics drives results. And if you can't statistically count me as a high-performing Black woman, then how can you say, yeah, Black women perform highly at this company and we should give them more opportunities, or what can we do to make that better? Does that make sense? Like if I'm hiding behind a veil of whatever, then I can't help improve the situation going forward.
That's true. I think for me, it's more so going into spaces where, like when I first moved to this area and I went into this place, I'm just gonna call it Triple BS. And I did it. And I did at one point, I did say that to my supervisor. I don't know. That's how I knew that I had it at that place. Because like I actually referred to the company in my meeting as Triple BS. Yeah. So because of my name is very it doesn't say my ethnicity at all. And so when they saw me, this tall Black woman with a fro, it was kind of like I just felt the vibe. Like from day one, I felt the vibe like
It was a culture shock for them.
It definitely was. For me, it was definitely a culture shock coming from Atlanta, where in Atlanta, it was no big deal for me. Like, of course I self-identified. And I graduated from Clark Atlanta, like we're elite. In my eyes, like you are elite. And you're in the Black Mecca of the South. So you don't have to be afraid, shall I say, or be or downplay because it's Atlanta. So you can pretty much go for the gusto. And then coming into this place and being like one of maybe 3 Black people in the whole entire office.
It's a double-edged sword. I've been used to being the only black in most of
Same,
the companies that I work for. Only,
same,
especially black male. Only. So
or at
it's
least
a
in the
double.
department. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because we know companies discriminate. This is why they have programs. This is why there's a such thing as diversity and inclusion.
that's yeah. But then to that point too, I think it's a culture thing too, Audrey, because you are always bold, and I think you do as you please, and versus me growing up in a predominantly white area for most of my life. Um, I think it's me in general also. I don't like to be anybody's focal point or center of attention. So it's always the sleekness. And then we were taught at CAU in the business school, we literally had classes and quizzes on what to wear and how to dress in
Yeah,
different environments. We
yeah.
had dining etiquette classes. We
Mm-hmm.
had like all of these things, and they taught us to be as minimalist as possible. Basically, like blend in and be
Yep.
wallpaper. And because you don't want to be a distraction, especially like in your business suit or whatever. You don't want anything else, your jewelry, your hair, your makeup, whatever, to be a
Perfume.
distraction. Yeah,
Yep.
from what you're saying to the people. And so that's how we were trained there. And I still roll with that. I think part of it is me also, because it's whatever is simplest and whatever is not going to draw any attention. I don't even want compliments at work. I just want you to hand me the paper off the printer and keep it pushing. So it's always the battle of I should show more of my personality of who I am outside of work, and how do I slowly bring that in. And I'm finally at a point now, how many ever years in, where I feel comfortable, and I feel comfortable with my title, my position, my role, and the culture of the company to have a little bit more flair. It's still at the end of the day going with those guidelines from the B school of black, blue, brown, gray, this to a casual event, this to a dinner event, whatever those things are, just to not stand out, to just like, and a lot of it, specifically that, which I appreciate about HBCUs, they tell you is do this so that you can avoid being discriminated against, or you can reduce the risk and
Yeah.
not make yourself a target.
Yeah, even in interviews, like when I did minority recruitment for a minority-owned executive search firm, we had to teach people basically, tell them what to wear, what not to wear. You have to get the job first. Then you can show your culture. Get the job first. Because if you can't get the job first, what's the point?
Down to, because we do that too, like when we go back as alumni and do mock interviews and stuff like that, we talk to them about like turn your music down or off from the point of you driving up to the building, because you don't know who's driving around you, or
Yeah, it's
all of
true.
those things.
It's
It's
true.
always a minimalized thing. So I just had this conversation with a coworker a couple months ago, because we went from a supplier diversity perspective. We were at an LGBTQ conference to support those business owners, and the guy, a middle-aged white guy, was like, well, I really connect with this cause, and I just really think it's hard that, for them to feel like they can't bring their whole selves to work. So I just did say, like, you realize that's everybody that's not you, right? Like, I cannot bring my whole
Hmm.
self to work, or you will judge me for these things. And he was like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, so I had to explain to him the being trained not to talk about these things, do talk about those things. Like, even as a woman in business school classes, they trained us, if you don't know golf or you don't know football or don't care about them, find out something so you can be included in the conversations. I give two shits about any of that. I like to watch the impact. I don't care what's going on the field. I don't care, but I need to be able to talk about it so that I can fit in the business environment, so that I can be seen as some sort of equal or whatever. And I'm like, that is a point of somebody not being able to bring their whole selves to work, or not being able to say comfortably, no, that's not my interest. I prefer this, and have someone just go with that and talk about it. It completely blew his mind that a minority might not be able to come in and talk about what they did on the weekend because the white people wouldn't understand.
Yeah, they're still clueless. We've had all kind of town hall meetings about that in my various jobs that we don't feel comfortable bringing our whole selves to work, and we probably never will. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I got to do what I got to do to feed my family. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, don't y'all feel bad because I work in a predominantly black organization now, and I feel like sometimes working in predominantly black organizations, there is that I'm a type of don't assume that you know me because we share the same skin tone. That's not how it goes. And so therefore, sometimes when you're in those type of settings, people can become too comfortable.
Yep.
Like one gentleman, he thought I was riding with him one day and he referred to me, he's more flamboyant, and he wanted to refer to me as bitch. And I was like, hold up. Now I know I'm in your vehicle and we cool and everything, but we not that cool. We gonna never be that cool. Ever. He was like, oh, my bad. And I was like, yeah, I was like, do what you do, but we never gonna be that cool. So that's side of that spectrum. And sometimes we amongst each other can get way too comfortable in a professional setting, and it's like, first and foremost, I'm professional before it's anything else when I'm at work. So everything else gonna take a backseat.
True story. And that is where my introversion and antisocial side kicks right in, because I will play dumb in a minute. Like, no, I don't know what show you're talking about. No, I've never heard of that. No, what do you mean? But again, I'm not in a lot of situations where there are a lot of black people at work. I have been in situations where there've been kind of the black people at work kind of band together because they're so few. But when you band together, you're doing some stuff that's not going to reflect in the way that I reflect. I try to present myself at work. So I'll kiki with you real quick and I'm going to excuse myself as soon as it gets out of hand.
Right.
So I do create distance, and it's always in the regard of I can always stop and say, hey, how you doing when I pass you at the printer or, at the coffee machine or whatever. I'm going to ask you about your kids. I am always aware of people and what's going on with them, but you're getting limited access to my life and my ability. And because to that point too, when people think they know you, they think they can bring up whatever it is that they know about you or ask you, or they don't have regard around who's around before they ask you about a specific personal thing. And these are not games that I am willing to play. So you're not going to get that information is the A. And the B, if you get that information and you do that, I'm not engaging. And if I'm not engaging right now, then you're also on timeout until I feel like you might know how to act right again. But it is, it's a real issue.
It definitely is. Well, I want to say thank you to both of you for taking the time out to come on to the podcast, To Whom It May Concern, Hood Professionals, because that's just what it is. And I want to once again say happy birthday to Retta.
Thank you.
And we wish the vet in the game, we wish Tafari continued success as a recruiter, and we appreciate all your knowledge and your gems. I just didn't know he was like this eloquently spoken. Like, I didn't know. And
well, you gotta know how to play the game. I've been playing it a long time.
There you go.
Hey, and it's I have learned so much. Like, seriously, I have learned a lot from both of you this evening, and I appreciate your time. So,
anytime.
I've learned as well, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace. Good night, everyone.
Bye.